The California sun painted Wilmington's cracked sidewalks in shades of amber and gold. It was the kind of peaceful Sunday afternoon that made the world feel safe, where families gathered for barbecues and children played in front yards without fear. 9-year-old Mike Tyson walked home alone, her sketch pad tucked securely under one arm, clutching the remains of a green apple in her small hand. She wasn't humming like most children her age might. She wasn't skipping or playing hopscotch on the sidewalk cracks. Aaliyah simply wanted to reach the safety of her home, just 3 blocks away. Her art class at the local community center had run longer than expected, and though Miss Rivera had kindly offered to walk her home, Aaliyah had politely declined. She was independent for her age, mature beyond her years, and the short walk was familiar territory she'd navigated dozens of times before. What could possibly go wrong in broad daylight on a quiet Sunday afternoon? 2 blocks from her green mailbox house, the purr of an engine interrupted the neighborhood's tranquil silence. A black and white police cruiser rolled slowly alongside her, its engine idling like a predator stalking its prey. The vehicle moved at her walking pace, neither speeding up nor falling behind, creating an invisible tension that seemed to thicken the afternoon air. Aaliyah didn't flinch. Her parents had taught her well, since she was 5 years old. Be polite. Be respectful. Be still. Never run from authority. Always answer questions honestly and clearly. These lessons had been drilled into her young mind not out of paranoia, but out of love and protection. The driver's side window lowered with a mechanical whir. Officer Ray Dunnan leaned out, his face an emotionless mask hidden behind reflective sunglasses that caught the afternoon sun like mirrors. His voice carried across the short distance between them, deceptively casual, but with an undertone that made Aaliyah's stomach tighten. "You lost, sweetheart." Aaliyah stopped walking immediately, her small sneakers coming to rest on the warm concrete. She forced what she hoped was a polite smile, the kind her parents had taught her to use when speaking to adults, especially those in uniform. Her voice was clear and respectful when she answered, "No, sir. I live right down that street." But something in Officer Dunnan's posture suggested this wasn't a helpful inquiry from a concerned public servant. His head tilted slightly, and even though she couldn't see his eyes behind those mirrored lenses, Aaliyah could feel them studying her with uncomfortable intensity. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to something colder, more suspicious. "You live here? What's your address?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Aaliyah pointed down the street toward her home, her gesture precise and confident. "4th house on the left, green mailbox." Her voice remained steady, but a small knot of anxiety began forming in her chest. This wasn't how these conversations were supposed to go. "You got ID?" The question struck Aaliyah as strange, almost absurd. She blinked twice, processing the request before responding with innocent confusion. "I'm 9. I don't have ID." The officer's tongue clicked against his teeth in disapproval, a sound that somehow managed to convey both irritation and condescension. The cruiser's door opened with a heavy metallic groan, and Officer Dunnan's black boot struck the pavement with deliberate force. He walked around the front of his vehicle with the slow, measured steps of someone who knew he held all the power in this interaction. When he stood directly in front of her, Aaliyah had to crane her neck to look up at his face. He towered over her small frame like a wall of authority, his uniform crisp and intimidating, his presence filling her entire field of vision. The afternoon suddenly felt less warm, less safe. "Where are your parents?" "At home. I just came from art class. Miss Rivera runs it at the community center." Aaliyah's answers remained truthful and direct, exactly as she'd been taught. But something in the officer's demeanor was shifting, becoming more aggressive with each exchange. "Don't get smart with me," he snapped, his voice dropping to a low growl that cut through the quiet afternoon like a blade. The sudden harshness made Aaliyah instinctively step backward, her small fingers tightening their grip on her sketch pad. She could feel her heart beginning to race, but she didn't dare run. Running would only make things worse. "I'm not," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just answering your questions." What happened next would change everything. In one swift, violent motion, Officer Dunnan lunged forward and grabbed Aaliyah's wrist with crushing force. The sudden attack caused her to cry out in shock and pain. The green apple tumbled from her hand, rolling across the sidewalk. Her precious sketch pad slipped from under her arm, falling open to reveal a drawing of a flower caught mid-bloom, now scattered on the concrete, like her shattered sense of safety. "I didn't do anything," Aaliyah whispered, panic rising in her throat like bile. Officer Ray Dunan's grip tightened around Aaliyah's small wrist with the force of a steel trap. His fingers dug into her delicate skin as he twisted her arm sharply, yanking her toward him with such violence that her feet nearly left the ground. The 9-year-old's eyes widened in terror as pain shot through her arm like lightning. "You've got a mouth on you," Dunan snarled, his face contorting with rage. "That's what's wrong with your kind. Always talking back, even when you're caught." "Caught doing what?" "I didn't." Aaliyah's desperate plea was cut short by another vicious twist of her arm. The crack that followed was sickeningly audible. It echoed across the quiet neighborhood like a gunshot, a sound so sharp and final that it seemed to freeze time itself. Aaliyah's scream tore from her lungs with such raw agony that birds scattered from nearby trees. Her small body crumpled to the concrete, her left arm bending at an unnatural angle that made seasoned adults later turn away in horror. She sobbed uncontrollably, gasping for breath between waves of excruciating pain. "I didn't do anything," she repeated through her tears, the words coming out in broken whispers. "I didn't do anything wrong." Officer Dunan stood over her fallen form, breathing heavily, his hand resting casually on his belt, as if nothing extraordinary had occurred. Behind those reflective sunglasses, his eyes showed no remorse, no recognition of the heinous act he'd just committed against a child. His face remained as emotionless as carved stone. "Maybe next time you'll learn some respect," he muttered under his breath, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt with practiced ease. But what Officer Dunan didn't know, what would ultimately become the detail that unraveled his entire world, was that the moment he'd first touched Aaliyah, she had pressed a button on her phone. It was an emergency shortcut her father had programmed and drilled into her memory. "If anything ever feels wrong, press this button and hold it down." The call connected instantly to Lauren Tyson, Mike Tyson's longtime personal security chief, former U.S. Marine, and Aaliyah's fiercely protective aunt. The phone, now clutched desperately in Aaliyah's uninjured hand, had recorded everything. Every question, every taunt, every cruel word, the sickening crack of breaking bone, and the heartbreaking sobs of an innocent child. The line stayed open. Lauren didn't need to answer. She was already in motion. At her home gym, Lauren's workout bag hit the floor with a thunderous crash. Her hoodie flew over her shoulders as muscle memory from her military training kicked in. Her car engine roared to life within seconds, tires screaming against asphalt as she raced through Wilmington's streets. Every second mattered now, and Lauren Tyson was a woman who understood the weight of seconds. Meanwhile, at Wilmington General Hospital, the emergency room staff had seen everything. Car crashes that defied physics, overdoses that pushed human biology to its limits, bar fights that left grown men broken and bleeding. But what happened next stopped their world completely. A police cruiser screeched up to the emergency entrance, tires smoking from the aggressive stop. The passenger door flew open, and Officer Dunan roughly pulled a small, broken child from the back seat. Aaliyah's arm hung uselessly at her side, her face pale with shock, tears streaming down her cheeks in silent rivers of pain. "What happened to her?" demanded Dr. Sarah Chun, the attending physician who rushed outside. "Kid fell off her bike," Dunan replied flatly, already backing toward his cruiser. "No big deal. Kids bounce back." "Fell. Her arm is shattered," shouted a nurse, immediately recognizing the severity of the injury. "We need a full report, officer. We need." But Officer Dunan was already driving away, his cruiser disappearing into traffic before anyone could get his badge number, before anyone could ask the questions that needed asking. He left no paperwork, no incident report, no explanation beyond his casual lie about a bicycle accident. Inside the emergency room, organized chaos erupted. "Get me pain medication now," Dr. Chun ordered. "Prep imaging immediately. Someone call orthopedics." Aaliyah drifted in and out of consciousness, the pain too overwhelming for her young body to process. Her lips trembled as she whispered the same phrase over and over like a broken prayer. I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything wrong. One sharp-eyed nurse named Maria noticed something unusual. Aaliyah's right hand was clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. When Maria gently tried to pry the small fingers open, she discovered a smartphone with its screen still glowing. She called someone. Maria whispered to Dr. Chun. The call's been active for over 23 minutes. At that exact moment, 30 blocks away, Lauren's car jumped the curb in front of Wilmington General Hospital. She burst through the automatic doors like a force of nature, her trained eyes scanning faces until she found the reception desk. Aaliyah Tyson, 9 years old, broken arm, she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to emergencies. I'm her emergency contact. The receptionist hesitated for only a moment before Lauren's intensity convinced her. Room 12. Lauren didn't thank her. She ran. The hospital room felt smaller with Lauren Tyson in it. She knelt beside Aaliyah's bed, her trained hands gentle as they held her niece's uninjured fingers, but her eyes burned with a fury that could melt steel. The temporary brace on Aaliyah's arm looked grotesquely oversized against her small frame, a stark reminder of the violence inflicted upon an innocent child. Auntie, Aaliyah whispered, her voice barely audible above the steady beep of monitoring equipment. I'm here, baby girl. I'm here. Lauren's voice was soft, controlled, but anyone who knew her would recognize the deadly calm that preceded a storm. Aaliyah's tears started fresh, and with them came words that would ignite Lauren's protective instincts like gasoline on fire. He grabbed me. I told him my name. I told him who my daddy is, and he laughed. Lauren's blood temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Her military training had taught her to read between lines, to understand tactical situations, to recognize threats and respond accordingly. But this was different. You told him you're Mike Tyson's daughter? Lauren asked quietly. Yes, Aaliyah sobbed. And he laughed at me. He said mean things, and then he hurt me on purpose. The room fell silent except for the electronic symphony of medical equipment. Lauren stood slowly, her jaw setting like concrete. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or an officer acting out of fear. This wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate cruelty, targeted malice against a child whose only crime was existing while black on a Sunday afternoon. Lauren pulled out her phone and opened the audio recording from the emergency call. Her finger hovered over the play button for only a moment before she pressed it. The room filled with a nightmare made audible. Aaliyah's small voice echoed from the speakers. Please, I didn't do anything. Please stop. That hurts. Then came the crack, sharp, final, devastating. Then came the scream. Dr. Chun, who had entered to check on her patient, stopped dead in the doorway. A nurse's hand flew to her mouth in horror. A paramedic who had seen countless tragedies turned his face away, unable to process what he was hearing. My God, someone whispered. Do we know who did this? Lauren's smile was terrifying in its coldness. I'm about to find out. She walked out of that hospital room and into war. The hallway buzzed with controlled chaos, medical professionals moving with practiced efficiency, families waiting for news, the general hum of a facility dedicated to healing. But Lauren moved through it all like a predator who had caught a scent. She pulled her phone from her jacket and dialed a number from memory. Sergeant Linda Brooks, Internal Affairs. It's Lauren Tyson. I need a favor, and I need it now. There was a pause. Linda Brooks had worked with Lauren before, knew her reputation, understood that when Lauren Tyson called in a favor, it was serious. What happened? A cop broke a 9-year-old girl's arm, didn't log the stop, didn't report the injury, and dumped her at the ER like garbage. Lauren's voice was steady, professional, but underneath ran a current of barely contained rage. And Linda, she's Mike's daughter. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several heartbeats. Then, send me everything you have. Lauren quickly forwarded the audio recording, photos from the emergency room, medical reports, and a snapshot of the nurse's log, showing the mysterious drop-off, with no accompanying paperwork. Her phone buzzed with a response in less than 10 minutes. Patrol Unit 73D. Unauthorized use. Officer Ray Dunnan. Prior complaints on file, 3 incidents, all dismissed due to insufficient evidence. Lauren stared at the file photo on her screen. Same face, same arrogant smirk, same reflective sunglasses that had hidden his eyes while he tortured a child. He hadn't even tried to disguise himself or cover his tracks. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. But Lauren Tyson was a Marine, and Marines had a saying: adapt, improvise, overcome. She was about to do all 3. Her next call went to her contact at the city planning office. Every cop had patterns, routines, places they felt safe. Within an hour, she had Officer Dunnan's weekly schedule mapped out like a military operation. Benny's Grill every Sunday, same time, same booth. Like clockwork. Lauren didn't tell Mike. She didn't call the press. She didn't alert the police department. She simply got in her car and drove across town, her military training clicking into place like armor. Benny's Grill was a classic American diner, red vinyl booths, checkered linoleum floors, the smell of bacon grease and coffee hanging in the air like comfort food perfume. The parking lot was half empty on this Sunday evening, filled with families finishing dinner and couples sharing dessert. Lauren parked across the street and waited. 15 minutes later, Ray Dunnan swaggered out of his patrol car, now dressed in civilian clothes, but still wearing those same reflective sunglasses like a badge of invincibility. He walked through the front door with the casual confidence of a man who had never faced consequences for his actions. Lauren waited another 5 minutes, then crossed the street. Her boots hit the pavement with the measured cadence of a soldier marching into battle. She opened the diner door, and the little bell above it chimed softly, innocently. Every head in the restaurant turned toward the sound. Ray Dunnan looked up from his menu, not recognizing her yet, still confident in his anonymity. "You lost, ma'am?" he asked with mock courtesy, the same tone he'd used with Aaliyah. Lauren didn't speak. Instead, she reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out her phone, and pressed play. The diner went silent as Aaliyah's voice filled the space. "Please stop. That hurts. I didn't do anything." Then came the crack. A fork clattered to the floor. A waitress froze mid-step. The color drained from Ray Dunnan's face like water from a broken dam. The silence in Benny's Grill was deafening. Every conversation had stopped. Every fork had paused halfway to mouths. Every eye was fixed on the confrontation unfolding in Booth 7. Ray Dunnan's face had gone from confident swagger to pale terror in the span of 30 seconds. "Where did you get that?" he demanded, standing so quickly that his coffee cup rattled against its saucer. His voice cracked slightly, the first sign that his arrogant facade was crumbling. Lauren remained perfectly still, her military training evident in her controlled posture. When she spoke, her voice cut through the diner's silence like a blade through silk. "You know who that little girl is?" "Doesn't matter," Dunnan snapped, but his bravado was evaporating with each word. She resisted arrest. She was being difficult. "She's 9 years old." Lauren's voice remained steady, deadly calm. "And she's Mike Tyson's daughter." The words hit Dunnan like a physical blow. The smirk vanished completely from his face, replaced by the dawning horror of a man who had just realized he'd walked into a trap of his own making. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, like a fish gasping for air. "And I'm Lauren Tyson," she continued, sliding a napkin across the table. Written in block letters were the words, "Room 12, Wilmington General, 9 years old, broken arm, audio evidence, witnesses, internal affairs." By now, half the diner was watching in shocked silence. A grandmother clutched her purse tighter. A father instinctively moved closer to his own children. The weight of what they were witnessing pressed down on the room like a physical force. "I suggest you think real carefully about your next 24 hours, Lauren said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had faced down enemies in combat zones. "You people think you can," Dunnan started, but Lauren's hand slammed onto the table with such force that the wooden surface shook. Coffee spilled. A sugar dispenser toppled over. "What you did wasn't fear," Lauren said, leaning forward until her face was inches from his. "It was cowardice. You broke a child. Not just any child. You broke our child. And now I'm going to break your career." She turned to leave, but paused at the door, looking back over her shoulder. The entire diner held its breath. "The next time I see you in uniform, I hope it's during your perp walk." Lauren left him there, shaking, pale, and completely exposed. Back in her car, Lauren's phone buzzed with a text from Linda Brooks. "We got him on record. Dispatch confirms he wasn't on duty when this happened. Took the patrol car without authorization. EMTs confirmed the drop-off story doesn't match his report. He's dirty." Lauren stared at the road ahead, her hand steady on the steering wheel. "Where is he now?" "Probably still at that diner. You didn't do anything reckless, did you?" "I didn't touch him," Lauren replied. "Not yet." That night, working with contacts she developed during her military service, Lauren made sure the audio recording found its way to a secure whistleblower platform. Within hours, the server was straining under the weight of millions of hits. The internet had discovered Aaliyah's story, and the reaction was immediate and explosive. Comments poured in like an avalanche. "I'm shaking. That poor baby. Name that cop. This is heartbreaking. Justice for this child." The story spread like wildfire across social media platforms. By midnight, hashtags were trending worldwide. Hashtag Justice for Aaliyah. Hashtag Wrong Child. Hashtag Tyson's Doubter. Celebrities began reposting the audio. Activists called for immediate police reform. Some users, unaware of the girl's famous father, simply reacted to the pure horror of hearing a child's arm being broken by someone sworn to protect and serve. And when Aaliyah's identity was finally revealed, adoptive daughter of boxing legend Mike Tyson, the internet exploded. This wasn't just another case of police brutality. This was personal. This was a declaration of war on the wrong family. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Officer Ray Dunan's world had completely collapsed. His social media accounts had vanished. His phone was disconnected. He didn't show up for his scheduled shift, but it no longer mattered. 2 news vans were parked outside his apartment building. A drone buzzed above his backyard, operated by citizen journalists determined to get the story. His neighbors avoided eye contact, some actively covering their faces, when cameras appeared. Inside the Wilmington Police Department, the atmosphere had curdled like milk left in the sun. No one defended Dunan. Not this time. Not after the world had heard that audio recording. Officers who might have closed ranks under normal circumstances found themselves examining their own consciences, questioning their own actions. Some exchanged uncomfortable glances. Others quietly disappeared into break rooms, suddenly finding paperwork that required immediate attention. The thin blue line had developed cracks, and everyone could hear the sound of something fundamental breaking apart. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Lauren sat vigil at Aaliyah's bedside. The child's arm was properly stabilized now, her small hand no longer clutching Lauren's jacket like a lifeline. The cast had been signed by 3 different nurses. "You're brave. You matter. Justice is coming." Aaliyah looked up at her aunt with eyes that seemed older than her 10 years. "Is he going to hurt someone else?" Lauren paused, choosing her words carefully. In her experience, children deserved honesty, but they also deserved hope. "No," she said firmly, "because you were brave enough to speak up, and now the whole world knows what happened." Aaliyah closed her eyes, her breathing finally slowing to a peaceful rhythm. For the first time in days, she looked like the child she was supposed to be. But Lauren remained awake, alert, planning. This was far from over. By sunrise, the story had transcended social media and exploded into mainstream consciousness. Over 500,000 people had listened to Aaliyah's emergency call. News stations across the country were playing the audio. Commentators were dissecting every word, and radio hosts were breaking down in tears on live broadcasts. The reaction was unprecedented. College campuses organized walkouts. Talk shows observed moments of silence. Entire communities gathered in churches, community centers, and town squares to discuss what they'd heard and what it meant for their own children. And yet, through it all, the Wilmington Police Department remained silent. No press conference, no public statement, no acknowledgement that Officer Ray Dunan even existed. Their silence was deafening, and it only fueled the growing fire. By 8 a.m., protesters had gathered outside the police precinct. They came from every walk of life: Parents clutching their own children's hands, students with handmade signs, grandmothers with bullhorns, activists with years of experience organizing for justice. The signs they carried told a story. Protect our kids. Aaliyah deserves justice. Not on our watch. Children are not enemies. Inside the precinct, phones rang constantly. Officers ducked into break rooms to avoid the media circus developing outside their windows. One young patrol officer stood rigidly behind the reception desk, watching the growing crowd through bulletproof glass, saying nothing, doing nothing. At the center of it all stood Lauren Tyson, calm and silent on the courthouse steps across from the police station. She wasn't leading the protest. She didn't need to. The city was moving on its own momentum now. She had lit the match, but the fire belonged to the people. Her phone buzzed with an update from Sergeant Linda Brooks. They've frozen Dunnan's pay. His badge has been flagged. He's officially under review for excessive force and conduct unbecoming. Lauren's jaw flexed with controlled anger. Not enough. Lauren, I know what you're thinking, but... I'm not thinking, Lauren interrupted. I'm acting. Because they're still treating this like a minor incident instead of what it is. Attempted murder of a child. The system's response came at 6:03 a.m. the following morning. Lauren had barely stepped outside for her daily run when a gray unmarked sedan screeched to a halt beside her. 3 men in plain clothes jumped out, moving with the coordinated precision of a tactical team. Lauren Tyson, the lead officer, barked, flashing his badge so quickly she couldn't read the details. You're under detention for obstruction of justice and aggravated assault on a peace officer. Before she could speak, they grabbed her arms, yanked them behind her back, and snapped on handcuffs. No Miranda rights were read. No phone call was offered. No explanation was given beyond the obviously fabricated charges. Neighbors appeared at windows and doorways, phones in hand. Someone was filming. The footage hit social media within minutes, adding another layer of outrage to an already explosive situation. At 6:44 a.m., Mike Tyson was in the middle of a phone interview when Linda Brooks called with the news. They took her, Linda said quickly. They bypassed normal channels. It's pure retaliation. Mike's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. I want every name involved. Every badge number, every signature, every address. Then he hung up and began making calls of his own. By 7 a.m., Lauren sat in a concrete holding cell, staring at a clipboard with a typed statement demanding she cease all involvement in any ongoing investigations of law enforcement misconduct. She read it once, then tore it in half, and dropped the pieces on the floor. You think I'm scared of paper? She muttered to the detective watching through the reinforced glass. At 8:02 a.m., the cell door swung open. Mike Tyson walked in, but he wasn't alone. 2 federal attorneys flanked him, followed by a civil rights agent and a videographer documenting everything. Mike didn't say a word. He simply handed a flash drive to the federal agent containing surveillance footage of Lauren's illegal arrest, dashcam video from the Benny's Grill confrontation, medical documentation proving Lauren's emergency responder credentials, and legal papers confirming her right to act on behalf of Aaliyah. She's leaving with us, the agent said simply. Outside the detention facility, a crowd had gathered, reporters, protesters, and even a city council member demanding answers. Mike took the microphone that was thrust toward him. They tried to silence the woman who protected my daughter, he said, his voice carrying the weight of barely controlled fury. Now they're going to learn what happens when you come after my family twice. That evening, Lauren and Mike held a town hall meeting at the local high school gymnasium. 600 people packed into a space designed for half that number. Parents, teachers, nurses, retired police officers, and dozens of survivors of similar abuse filled every available seat and lined the walls. One by one, they stepped forward to share their stories. A mother with trembling hands described her son being thrown face-first into a squad car because he matched the description. A teenager showed photos of his 14-year-old brother after a routine traffic stop. A retired officer, his badge still visible in his wallet, spoke about trying to report his partner's misconduct 3 times, only to be told to retire quietly by internal affairs. Each testimony was like a wound being reopened, but also like a burden being shared. Lauren stood at the center of it all, listening, absorbing, promising. "We're building a case," she announced. "And when it's complete, every name, every badge, every sealed file they tried to hide, it's all coming out." That night, their website went live, tysonjustice.org. By sunrise, it had received over 18,000 verified submissions from people across the country, sharing their own encounters with police misconduct. The impact was immediate and sweeping. The Wilmington police chief resigned. 3 additional officers were placed on administrative leave. The district attorney reopened 10 closed cases, all connected to Ray Dunan's pattern of behavior. In her quiet hospital room, Aaliyah sat propped up in bed, scrolling through news headlines on a tablet and reading them aloud. Tyson's daughter sparks national police reform. Anonymous audio recording shakes law enforcement. Justice for Aaliyah movement gains momentum. She looked up at Lauren, who had come to visit before another strategy meeting. "Do you think other kids will be safe now?" Lauren knelt beside the bed and gently tucked a curl behind Aaliyah's ear. "They will be. Because you were brave enough to speak when it mattered most." Aaliyah smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shown since that terrible Sunday afternoon, and hugged her aunt tightly. Outside the hospital, the crowd hadn't stopped gathering. But inside this small room, for the first time in weeks, everything felt peaceful. The voice of one brave little girl had started a movement that would reshape how America thought about justice, accountability, and the protection of its most vulnerable citizens. The fight was far from over, but the battle had been joined. And Ray Dunan, sitting in his cell awaiting trial, was about to learn that when you hurt a Tyson, the whole world watches what happens next.